Hi, I'm standing in South Parade in Summertown on Thursday afternoon, October the 3rd. It's the first reasonably walkable day that we've had after a horrendous almost week of continuous rain. So I'm going to take advantage of it, and I'm going to be sticking to the streets for this walk and possibly for the next few because the ground is still so wet. And last week I looked at a new lake, even if it's only a temporary lake, a lake in Port Meadow formed by the flooding. And today I'm going to continue the theme of lakes, and I'm going to look at a street with a lake in it. Granted, it's not a very big lake because you couldn't fit a big lake into the street, but it's still a lake. And it's in the northernmost part, almost, of North Oxford. So that's where I'm going. Where I am right now is South Parade at the north end of Summertown. So that's the Woodstock Road. That's roughly south, back towards the city centre. And that's the Banbury Road, and again that's south. One hazard of walks like this is traffic noise, but I'll try to keep to smaller roads so that it's not too much of a problem. There are two useful things coming up. On the right, just past the little road, is the Summertown Library, which is a nice quiet place to read, and quite a bit quieter and more sort of homely than the city centre main public library. And there is the animal welfare charity shop with a good selection of books. And where I am now is Middle Way. Which is a road running north between the Banbury and Woodstock roads, with side streets connecting it to both. Up to 1930 or so, Summertown was officially a village and wasn't part of Oxford, though building had started in it before that. Now it's more or less lost its separate identity. I mean, it's there are buildings going all the way from central Oxford to Summertown. But it's still regarded as posh, particularly a group of roads off to the right, which I'll come to another time. And I still remember when I was an undergraduate, I had to get a prescription, and all the chemists in the city centre were closed, so I had to take a bus to Summertown. I didn't know then how easy it was to walk to. And when I was on the bus and asked for a ticket, a lady piped up behind me they do say, you know, that even the birds sing more sweetly in Summertown. And when I was in there's a Marks and Spencer's in Summertown near the market, which I've done 2 videos about. And when I was there in 2009, which was, about a year after the financial crisis, I was talking to a member of staff in Marks and Spencer's, and they told me that it was one of the few Marks and Spencer's where they'd not noticed the financial crisis having any effect. But anyway, Summertown was a separate village, and some of the buildings may date from that time. And Summertown's former separateness also feeds into something else. There's a pervasive myth, I think it's a myth, that North Parade, which is about halfway to Summertown from the centre, and South Parade, which I've just come out of, are named after the furthest advances of the troops on the 2 sides during the English Civil War, during the siege of Oxford. And that I have read in a source that seems reputable is not so. Both streets were built at about the same time in the 1850s or 1860s, and I think just called something like Parade or The Parade or Parade Street. And because in those days Summertown was a separate entity from Oxford, there was no need to worry about the 2 streets having the same name or similar names. But when Summertown officially became part of Oxford, that couldn't be tolerated, so the streets had to be renamed so that they could be distinguished. It's happened to lots of other streets that suffered name clashes when their villages were joined to Oxford. I think I read that there were 9 church streets, or there would have been, had they not all been renamed. Now I'm on Squitchey Lane. The sun is out intermittently, and when it is out, it still feels nice and warm. I've got shorts on, but there is a wind blowing intermittently from the east, which is quite chilly out of the sun. Now I'm on Woodstock Road. St. Gregory and St. Augustine Catholic Church. And the road sloped a bit, but it's levelling off now. The road will become murderous shortly because it's 5 to 3 and the school run will start. And now I'm coming to the turning into Wolvercote on the left. So Wolvercote is down there, but I'm going to bypass it today, at least on the way up. Now this is interesting. I'll come back to it when I get off the main road to somewhere quieter. But note the steps and the level of the track up against the fence. Right, so the next thing I want to do is to cross Sunderland Avenue here. The less time spent on it, the better. That is Sunderland Avenue, but I'm not going to spend any time in it. I'm going to go straight round to 5 Mile Drive here. Right, at last there's a bit of peace. So the first thing to say is that I was timing my crossing. I had to use 2 separate crossings to get across Sunderland Avenue, and the combination took something like 45 seconds or over half a minute. And that really doesn't seem to be the best way to encourage walking. Encourage people to take exercise. It's also just inconvenient. And the second is that Sunderland Avenue is horribly, dreadfully noisy, and what sort of complete moron routes a busy road past houses like that and expects people to live in them. And the other thing, completely different, when I was on Woodstock Road just before crossing, I pointed at a raised footpath on the other side of the road, the nearest side to Wolvercote, and I said I'd explain that. That apparently was built sometime in the 1800s, under funding by the university, because a lot of university members wanted to be able to walk on dry ground. Walking was apparently a popular exercise amongst undergraduates in the early 19th century, and I gather that the existing I don't know whether the roads had separate pavements then, but whatever you generally walked on wasn't very good quality, so your feet got very wet, and the university funded improvements to some of the path alongside Woodstock Road and possibly Banbury Road, so that members could walk from the centre of Oxford, that is, up to 5 Mile Drive, and then along it, and then back. So they'd walk up Woodstock Road, walk along here, and then back down Banbury Road. And that odd little high section of footpath, it's along the boundary wall of Sheriff's Drive in Wolvercote, is part of that survives. Well, okay, so I'm now on 5 Mile Drive, and it is a lot quieter. And I can only say that the planners ought to do the same to Sunderland Avenue, as they seem to have here, and close it altogether to traffic. So I'm standing on the corner of Linkside Avenue and 5 Mile Drive now, and I'm going to go up Linkside Avenue. So this is a rough map of the area. 5 Mile Drive is down there. I'm about here. Linkside Avenue goes up from my finger, and then Lakeside goes round like that in an elongated square, and the lake is to the south of it. And I've just noticed that there are a lot of events being advertised. Apple Day is this Sunday, and that happens in the Wolvercote Community Orchard, or Apple Orchard, 2 till 4 Sunday. Apple tasting, apple sales, apple juice, cakes, preserves, apple pressing, the longest peel competition, and then a few things to do with conkers which you can't actually eat, and 1 or 2 other things, including a raffle. And I also notice that there's a Greek food fair, Saturday the 5th of October, 11 to 3, in the Wesley Memorial Hall on Newen Hall Street, so that's bang in the city centre. That will be a successor to the Orthodox Bazaar, the Russian Orthodox Church in Canterbury Road, used until about 10 years ago to hold an Orthodox Bazaar at the start of every November, and it was much loved for the wonderful food, Russian, Polish, Greek, various others, Serbian, and for things like the Russian fairy tale books. It was a great resource for anybody who wanted to learn Russian, Russian CDs and tapes, and matryoshka dolls, and all sorts of nice things. Sadly, that's now ended. But the Greek food fair will have some lovely stuff to eat. Okay, so this is Linkside Avenue. And it is even quieter here than on 5 Mile Drive. Linkside Avenue is relatively modern. It wasn't given an official name until 1935. And Lakeside, apparently, not until 1967, according to a history article that I found on the area's website. Now, I think the lake is very close behind that house. I have a feeling that I used to be able to see it through the windows because there are big windows at the back. Ah, and there it is. That's the lake. So, okay, it is a bit bigger than I thought. Right, so that is the lake that gave its name to Lakeside Avenue. And the blog does say that people do swim in the lake and boat in it. A friend of mine said that when a friend of hers, who's now 80, was a child, they used to swim in the lake regularly. I suspect that in those days residents were less fussy about where the swimmers came from. But I think the lake is now officially intended only for the people who live in Linkside Avenue and Lakeside. Okay, so I'm now turning down Lakeside. Well, that's an unusual style of art for the area. I think that one is pretty recent. It'll probably have to be shoehorned in as 4B or whatever. Oh, I see. 11 and 11B. 15. So there's this funny sort of little tail to the square. Over in the direction that they're going. Lakeside. Lakeside 55. Lakeside 57. And Lakeside 59. And what is over there? Well, it looks like a very well kept lawn. I don't know whether it belongs to this house. I somehow think not. And I can hear cars beyond it. It's funny that it is so comprehensively blocked from view, that it has been so comprehensively blocked from view. It seems intentional. Anyway, I can't get close enough to it to see what it is. So now I'll come back round the other side. Now the lake has an interesting history, it seems. The land around here is clay with a layer of gravel on top. And the lake is what's left of a brickworks. I think it's officially known in council documentation as the Wolvercote Brick Pit. It ceased operation in 1930. The brickworks ceased operation in the 1930s when cheaper bricks became available elsewhere. But before that, at least for the previous half century or so, I don't know about earlier, their business was fueled by the building boom in Oxford, and particularly North Oxford. I don't know whether it was officially landscaped as a lake, and if so, by who. I'm just thinking of somebody who's 80 now, knew it when they were a child. Let's say child equals 10. So that's 70 years ago. which is plenty of time for the brickworks to have been taken out of service and made to look pleasant. And apparently, the people currently living in the avenue are not the first inhabitants. It seems that a number of stone axes have been found. Some of them were found by the brickworkers and sold to private collectors, and quite often ended up in the collections of the Pit Rivers, the Ashmolean, or the University Natural History Museum. One site I looked at said that they were lower Paleolithic, the beginning of the Old Stone Age, 75,000 years ago, but I think that may be a typo, and there should be an extra zero there. And looking this up a bit, I find that there's a classification of lithics, as they're called, stone tools, proposed by an archaeologist called Graham Clark in 1969. And he calls them different modes. Mode 1, Mode 2 and Mode 3 is where we start. And Mode 1 is the most primitive, let's say, the earliest. Basically, you've got two stones and you use one stone to hit flakes off the other. The stone you do the hitting with is called a hammerstone. And then you use the flakes to make knives or whatever, cutting implements. And there's very little planning involved in that. And then Mode 2, there seems to be a bit more planning. You've got an idea that you want to make something like a hand axe, and you bash away at one stone with the other stone until you've shaped it in roughly the way that you want. And then Mode 3 is considerably more sophisticated, and you have to be able to conceptualize quite a complicated shape and approach it through some sort of plan of strokes and shaping and shaping. And the idea seems to be that these interact with the development of our mental abilities. So by the time Mode 3 was possible, we had more or less the same ability to plan complicated operations that we do today, whereas Mode 1 could have been done by ancestors of ours who were not quite so developed, whose minds hadn't evolved to our present, shall I say, superlative stage. Mode 2 I don't know about. I'm not sure what stage the hand axes found in the brick pit are, but from the description I found in a council assessment of the site, it looks as though they were probably at least Mode 2. Sadly, it seems that most of the archaeology was done in the 30s, and there's been very little since. And since we didn't have most of the physical investigative techniques then, it's not clear how much we actually know when you factor out the sort of undeveloped stage that archaeology was in the 30s. But it's interesting to think of these people 750,000 years ago. Doing whatever they did. Apparently the climate, at least according to some other remains that have been found, was rather warmer than it is now. It seems that there are bones of rhino and elephant and bison, as well as animals that you're more likely to expect, such as horse and red deer. And I must say I rather like the idea of coming upon a rhino or an elephant in North Oxford. No rhinos or elephants there. Of course, those were the posh early Paleolithic inhabitants. The less posh ones all ended up in Cowley Road. I think the one problem with early archaeology must be nowadays we have all sorts of sophisticated chemical and physical techniques which can investigate materials in great detail and find out, for example, whether two pieces of stone or stone tool have the same isotope ratio, the same contaminants, and so on. Back in the 30s, we had yet to develop most of those. We didn't have the computational ability to handle the data apart from anything else, or some of these sophisticated spectroscopic methods. So I think archaeologists depended a lot more on what's called typology, which is looking at the shapes of things and the kinds of inscription and so on, and comparing them and trying to work out similarities and developments on that basis.
filming as a matter of interest?
Oh, well, that was amusing. I've just had a chat with somebody who lives around here. He saw me trying to do what I said earlier, which is to make sure I don't miss out any of the houses. And he said, well, I hesitated to interrupt you. I thought maybe Google Maps had been reduced now to a man swinging a phone. So may I just assure anybody who watches this video and who lives in Lakeside or Linkside Avenue that I'm not from Google Maps. Though Google Maps, if you want any help, I'd be very willing to contribute, provided you pay for the shoe leather. And the occasional beer. Because beer nowadays is very expensive in Britain. And since Brexit, so are most other things. I'm also facing a problem that I'd more or less forgotten about during the sunny weather, and that's that the equipment isn't very good at coping with sudden changes in light. And the sun's been going in and out like a yo-yo, or whatever it is that things go in and out like this afternoon. So I'm having to cut and reset sometimes, because that resets the light sensitivity to current conditions. There's the boat again. So let's think of the kids swimming in it 70 years ago, and the old Stone Age guys using it some 10,000 times earlier. Definitely seeing some autumnal colours now. So that is Linkside Avenue and Lakeside, and there's one last thing that I want to show, which I need to go back to 5 Mile Drive for, and then turn off again. And this is Carey Close, and it is on the south side of the lake. And what I can do is to go up here and although I'm not allowed to walk to the lake, I can just about see it, I think. Oh, well, maybe I can't quite. I thought last time I was here that I could. But I'm fairly sure that the trees in the distance are on the far side. So the lake is somewhere there. And that's Carey Close. I think what I have to do next is to cross back here. And that, this time, has taken me 4 minutes to cross those two roads, and it would have been slightly longer if I'd waited for the light to turn green at the second one rather than just spotting that there were no cars coming. It's easier that way because there's only one road leading in, one stream of traffic leading in. Some very nice cyclamen down there. And that is the little raised footpath that I mentioned when I came in the other direction, the one that was built or at least funded by the university so that university members could go for a walk from the city centre to here, 5 mile drive, and then back Banbury Road without getting their feet wet on the not very well maintained roads or paths of the time. That is the entrance to Wolvercote, and this is where I'm going to end. So that was Summertown South Parade, up the Woodstock Road to 5 Mile Drive, Linkside Avenue, Lakeside, a quick look at Carey Close, trying to find the lake from that end but failing, and then back here. See you next time.